Okay, for week one, I had to come out of the closet with a Mahomes jersey to celebrate kickoff. But hey, welcome back to the IDP Advice show. This week, we're going to talk about the NFL's last remaining holdout. We're going to go over Rams linebacker starters. We're going to preview Thursday and Friday games. And then we are going to talk starting safety questions from around the league in our rapid fire defensive backs at the end of this show. So stick with us. Also, this show is sponsored by IDP Plus. You go to idpplus.com, get more in-depth topics covering IDP, dynasty football, and NFL betting. Subscribe today to the YouTube channel IDP Plus Fantasy or IDP Plus Betting, as well as IDP Plus Shorts. All right, let's get into it. All right, you know who it is. It's Nate Cheat with Ricky Rod 66. Hey, we're going to jump into our first topic, which is our NFL's last remaining holdout. So Haasan Reddick is still not reported to the Jets, with Robert Saleh saying if he does report for Monday, it's like finding loose change in the couch, just a bonus.
Well, I hate to disagree with Saleh, and I know he's downplaying it, but Reddick is so critical for that Jets defense. They gave away John Franklin Myers basically for a song to the Broncos after they traded for Reddick and all. And not sure what happened in the contract situation, but not having him on that defensive line is certainly going to hurt them. Will McDonald and Michael Clemens are going to platoon. Clemens more against the run, McDonald against the pass, but neither one's is a Haasan Reddick. For you IDP leaguers out there, I'm probably not starting either one. And if I'm a Reddick owner, I'm hoping they figure something out. But even if he's signed tomorrow, I'm not putting him in my week one lineup.
All righty. Well, hey, let's talk about on the other side of the country now with the Rams linebackers. Some reports coming out of camp that Troy Reeder might take the place of Ernest Jones. If you remember, he was just traded to Tennessee a week or so ago. Stu Jackson from the Rams.com mentioned that Reeder looks like the likely start next to Roseboom at the Lions in week one.
Not only is Troy Reeder being talked about as starting next to Roseboom, now the talk is that Reeder will be wearing the green dot. If he wears the green dot, then there's a chance he's playing the 90+% snaps that we saw Ernest Jones play historically last year and Bobby Wagner the year before that. So while there was talk about Roseboom potentially getting into that role, it certainly looks like it's going to start the year with Reeder. But still a situation to avoid. If you are desperate here for week one, pick up Reeder and play him. There's a reason he hasn't started all these years. There's a reason Reeder has been on special teams most of this time. He's a great team player. He's great on special teams. He can't cover. He's not a great tackler. He's a smart guy, but don't take the chance on Reeder. Don't take the chance on Roseboom. I'm still taking Omar Speights, stashing him and hoping for him to take over at some point as the year progresses.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit of Thursday night football. We have real football coming up. The season's about to begin. And on Thursday, Baltimore heads to Kansas City for the season opener. IDP star Chris Jones opens the season on the injury report with a shoulder issue, but seems set to play.
He certainly does. And so Chris Jones had a shoulder stinger is how they were describing it, but all signs are pointing to him playing and him being close to 100%. Chris Jones is interesting because I can see him now trying to take the mantle of the number one defensive tackle in the league as Aaron Donald retired. He's sure getting paid like it. So if he has a chance now to really solidify himself for the future, and when I say for the future, but for a potential gold jacket, setting himself up for number one defensive tackle. He seems motivated for that third title to go after it, motivated potentially for a gold jacket. I see a big year from Chris Jones. No injury slowing him down in week one either.
Nice. All right. So last week, the Cardinals and Chiefs agreed to a trade that sent linebacker Cameron Thomas to Kansas City. Reports that the Cardinals felt comfortable with the depth that they had in their linebacker room.
Yeah, they did say that. So Cam Thomas was a third round pick. Disappointing. He's been through a couple of different systems and all. He seemed to be picking up some things when he was playing with J.J. Watt, but it seems like some of that growth stalled. I think going to Kansas City is a great place for him to go to continue that growth and not have the pressure of trying to start. So look for him in a backup role as the season progresses, but he will be used with Charles Omenihu still out from the ACL injury he had late last year. So Thomas should get a little bit playing time, knowing you're going to start IDP at this point in time. But keep an eye. He might be one to do a leapfrog with the new environment.
All right. So, like, speaking of linebackers, let's talk about the questions that Baltimore has next to Roquan Smith. It seems like there could be a path to starting besides Smith for Malik Harrison or Trenton Simpson.
Well, I've picked up Malik Harrison in many of my IDP leagues, particularly whether it be redraft or dynasty, but particularly redraft where he really wasn't being picked, because it sure looks from the preseason that there's a probability that he'll be the person starting next to Roquan Smith here. Based on preseason game usage, Harrison wore the green dot. Simpson didn't when the two of them were on the field. And then Harrison exited earlier while Simpson stayed on the field, implying that Harrison might be ahead of him in the pecking order. While I picked up Harrison, I encourage all of you to do so. I wouldn't be starting him. I wouldn't take that risk in week one unless you were very desperate. But I would definitely be stashing him because you could have a high upside number two linebacker. If you think about what Patrick Queen did last year in Baltimore, those are the shoes that Harrison would be end up filling. So great opportunity with Harrison. Grab him, stash him, hit the add button right now, folks.
All right. And you know that I got to throw a curveball at Ricky and go off script here. So, talking about this game, Kansas City, home, Baltimore coming in, we know the history. I think I'm going Chiefs. Where are you going with it? Do you think Baltimore comes in and wins?
I do not think Baltimore comes in and wins. So, and here's the reason why. It's called the offensive line. So people are talking about how great Baltimore's run game is and run system is, but Baltimore hasn't had to replace three of their five starting offensive linemen. And while I've picked up Derrick Henry in several best ball leagues, and I own him in one of my favorite dynasty leagues. In fact, I'm wearing one of the shirts now from that dynasty league. I do have concerns, particularly to start the year with as they try and gel. Not to mention Ronnie Stanley was not his usual self last year, coming off of those knee injuries. Lindenboom, the center, has had some injury troubles here in the preseason. I expect a rocky start to the year for Baltimore with the run game. I don't think Lamar can pass them to victory against the Chiefs, even with the concerns Chiefs had at the cornerback. I think this is Mahomes and the Chiefs, a fairly easy victory of 10 plus.
All righty. Well, let's move on to Friday night, where Philly and Green Bay fly out to Brazil for the first international game of the year. Reports out of Philly that after being disregarded, Nakobe Dean has a chance to surprise people. Do you think he steps up when it matters?
Well, when it matters is the ultimate choice of words there, Nathan, because when it matters won't be to start the year because I envision that Devin White and Zach Bond will be the starting linebackers. It's interesting. Bond was primarily an edge linebacker slash edge slash defensive end, I should say, with the Saints. Moving to inside linebacker, where he never really played for the Saints, it was quite the shift. But even though Nakobe Dean was there, even though they drafted Jeremiah Trotter, the legacy Eagle, they still went with Bond in this unfamiliar spot, and he's continued to stay there throughout the preseason. So I do expect them to start with Bond. Now, Dean did have great counting stats during the preseason. PFF graded him very highly, but also Trotter actually stepped up. I expect that Devin White will be the primary starting linebacker all year long, but I could see a rotation happening. In Vic Fangio, I don't see him very patient, so I could see him going from Bond to Dean, even trying Trotter late in the year, maybe going back to Bond and Dean. It's going to be a fluid situation. So don't start Nakobe Dean this week, folks. I would take the chance with Zach Bond if you need to, as maybe like a number 4 linebacker on your team for really deep leagues. But if you can, stash Dean for potential later in the year.
Gotcha. All right. So let's turn our attention now to the Green Bay side. What's the outlook for these linebackers in Green Bay?
Well, Edgerrin Cooper was the first linebacker drafted in the 2024 NFL draft. He was drafted by the Packers with them envisioning Devondre Campbell going to San Francisco and Edgerrin Cooper stepping in right next to Quay Walker, and Quay Walker now manning the middle and wearing the green dot. Cooper had injury problems throughout preseason and a little bit into some of the mini camps and so forth, got very little playing time. So right now he's actually fourth on depth chart. Journeyman Eric Wilson is actually number 3 linebacker in the SAM. Isaiah McDuffie is the number 2. Walker's the number 1. So Cooper, do I have hopes for later this year? Yes, but much later in the year. He just missed so much time. So he's someone that if you can stash and keep for later, fantastic. But if you're in a dynasty league, after the first couple of weeks and he's hardly getting any playing time, target him as a trade candidate. I think he'll be a great trade candidate to go after in dynasty leagues.
Gotcha. All right. And, so you brought up in our talks before the show about the safeties in Green Bay. Spread a little love on that.
Spread a little love. If I could sing, I'd sing a song to that, but I can't sing, and I don't want to hurt everybody's ears. But here's what I tell you: Javon Bullard, he is going to be starting at safety. He's going to be starting next to Xavier McKinney, who they spent a lot of money on and grabbing him and bringing him over from the Giants. The interesting thing that's going on with Bullard is that where Keyshawn Nixon played the slot for the Packers, during the preseason, what we saw is Bullard playing some slot, and Evan Williams, the other rookie that drafted, apologized. It was either 4th or 5th round, but he's been very impressive. They moved him into safety next to McKinney. So this is one that for Bullard, if he's on the field for 100% of the snaps, including getting some on the slot, could be a very, very, very interesting candidate from an IDP perspective. So from while he's a rookie, there could be some good numbers there. And Evan Williams, keep that name in mind, particularly if Bullard happens to get hurt.
All right. So let's continue this rapid fire into Indianapolis for the Colts.
The Colts. I'll give Chris Ballard credit. He has no problem in telling folks that he is very comfortable with being fired if they're not happy with him. That's one heck of a attitude. I guess when you get paid that well for 8 years as GM of the Colts, you can kind of say those kinds of things. But that aside, Nick Cross, it appears, is going to be the starting free safety, Julian Blackmon the starting strong safety. In Gus Bradley's defense, Blackmon does play more of a box. Historically, Blackmon until last year was more of a free safety type. Moved into the box, was very productive from an IDP perspective. So, so he is someone I would definitely target right now, Julian Blackmon. Nick Cross from a free safety, there's going to be a lot of learning curve. There's going to be a lot of missed tackles. They traded up to draft him a couple of years ago. He hasn't panned out. They decided not to try and sign free agents such as Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs. They decided to stick with what they had in-house. And he made the comment, the GM, just in a couple of days, that they've got to play to grow and learn. There's going to be some growing pains with Nick Cross. Don't put him in your IDP lineups. But if you can get Blackmon, scoop him up.
All right, let's head down to Florida with Jacksonville and the Jaguars.
Very, very interesting. Darnell Savage, who they signed as a free agent, gave him pretty decent money with everyone expecting him to start at safety right next to Andre Cisco, who's also in the last year of his contract as a side note. Savage did miss a lot of camp because of the injury he was overcoming when he was with the Packers, and he just got cleared just in the last couple of weeks. When he did play and when they took off the red jersey, what was interesting, he wasn't starting at safety next to Cisco. It was Antonio Johnson, the rookie that got drafted last year, who has performed quite well. Savage was actually coming in and playing at the slot as opposed to one of the cornerbacks. So Savage will get some of those slot snaps and potentially be close to the line, but at the same time, he may only get 80% of the snaps. And coming off the injuries and missing a lot of the preseason, Antonio Johnson, that's a name to go and grab. And I think he's going to be very productive, and you'll be glad you have him on your team. Put him in that lineup.
There we go. All right, let's move down the panhandle into the main part of Florida in Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's talk about them a little bit. They're welcoming home Jordan Whitehead coming back from the Jets, back to where he originally started in Tampa Bay. He and Winfield will be the safety tandem, uh, patrolling the position for the Bucks. But what I wanted to talk about is actually the slot position. Chris Ezien, Izien, apologize for butchering the pronunciation of the last name, for Rutgers, who had played in the slot last year for Tampa Bay, while he gave it his all, probably not where he needs to be, he is going to be a backup safety this year. Replacing him, rookie draft choice from Georgia, Tyke Smith. So Tyke Smith is the person that will be playing in the slot for the Bucks this year. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. It will be really interesting to see how much 5 defensive backs they play and how much playing time they get. If it looks like they're playing 5 defensive backs quite a bit, does Tyke Smith get enough points for you playing in the slot if he has a cornerback designation? He just might. Not running out to grab him right now, but certainly someone on my watch list, Tyke Smith.
Alrighty. Well, let's move from the Gulf Coast to the coast of Lake Michigan, to Chicago and the Bears.
The Bears. So where this one is interesting, and part of the reason I told Nathan I wanted to put this one on the list is because I'm going to be talking about safety utilization. Jaquan Brisker played a little bit more box than he played deep, while they had Jackson patrolling deep for the Bears. Eddie Jackson, that is. Eddie Jackson moves on. They signed Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard and Brisker both can play that box and or deep. There's discussion that to disguise defenses more, that you might see a little bit of Byard coming up and Brisker back, or vice versa. What that means for fantasy points, if Brisker's not as close to the line of scrimmage as often, less of a chance for tackles in particular, that could hurt his points output for this year. So Brisker's one I'm being a little bit more careful of. I'd be watching week 1 carefully, and possibly even week 2. And I wouldn't go beyond week 2 very much. If you see his point totals, depending on your scoring system, are slightly lower than what you've seen in the past, I'd be trying to trade him pretty quick.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people targeting Brisker, and so that's interesting to have a stay of hand there when targeting him. But let's go to the other side of the Great Lakes, over to Buffalo, and talk about the Bills.
Boy, I tell you what, when you talk about teams that I'm worried about taking a big step back, it is the Buffalo Bills. I know this is an IDP show, but on offense, if you look at all the weaponry they lost from a wide receiver perspective, plus a backup running back, now they're going to have a rookie backup running back and so forth. Offensive line, they lost their center to free agency, Mitch Morse. So they lost all that. On the defensive side, they lost Tre'Davious White. They lost Milano to yet another injury. They've lost a lot of talent overall. They lost Poyer. They lost Micah Hyde, their 2 starting safeties. So in general, I'm worried about the Bills. So let's start there. At the defensive back position, at safety specifically, looks like Taylor Rapp is definitely going to start. But Taylor Rapp isn't exactly a stud in terms of player goes. He does understand McDermott's system, so he will be one of the 2 starters. The other one right now is a potential coin flip to start the year. It's not clear if it's going to be Damar Hamlin, the miracle man. It's going to be Mike Edwards, or the rookie Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop got off to a really good start in some of the OTAs and mini camps, and then when training camp started, but then he had an injury and missed a good part of training camp. Mike Edwards, who they signed from the Chiefs, who potentially be a bridge from a veteran perspective. He missed a lot of training camp because of injuries. And Damar Hamlin, while his story is phenomenal, and thank God that he's still alive and so forth, is just not that great of a safety player. He's more of a special teams type of player. Cameron Lewis is even a name to keep in mind. The net of all that is whoever starts in week 1, I don't expect will be starting when we get to week 18. I do think Cole Bishop will be starting by the time the end of the year comes. I'm not touching any of these guys to start the year and putting them into my lineups at all. But if I'm placing a bet, I'm placing on Bishop, but it's going to take some patience. And the other thing, if you don't own Bishop and there's another owner that has him, he's someone to target if you can stash for later on in the year.
Gotcha. Yeah, just going off script here a little bit with Bishop. The old saying of targeting like a rookie defensive back because they'll get picked on by the quarterback. Do you think this is something that could happen with Bishop when he starts playing?
That's usually something that happens with cornerbacks more so than safeties. The other thing about Bishop, so I'm glad you kept us on this topic here that I wanted to bring up, is one of the things that made Bishop very intriguing is how he was used in college. He was used all over the place, but he was actually particularly very successful close into the line of scrimmage. There's talk about Rapp actually playing that strong safety role, and Bishop or Edwards playing that free safety role instead, which could have an impact. So there's a lot to watch on this Buffalo safety situation, and a lot to be cautious of early in the year.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's move down south again towards that golf, more in your neck of the woods there, Ricky, to Houston, to the Texans.
Houston Texans. I have to tell you, Jalen Petrie, I'm trying to acquire him in many leagues right now. He is the man to go after. Had an incredible rookie year from a IDP points perspective. Was at the top of the heap from a safety perspective. He got used very differently and got benched during several games last year because of poor tackling, poor angles, and the likes of Eric Murray and MJ Stewart replacing him. But now this year they've moved him down to the star position. He's playing. He'll start off at safety, but when they go to nickel or dime, he is moving to that star position where he was so effective at Baylor, and this is just ripe for him. I project him to be a top 3 safety this year. I think he's going to kick you know what this year. When he moves up there, you still have behind him either Kalen Bullock or Eric Murray back there. But Petrie is the man. I can't tell you enough. Go get Jalen Petrie. Trade a future draft pick. Trade a backup linebacker or defensive end for someone unsuspecting. He is the man. Top 3 safety this year. Book it. You heard it here.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. I grabbed him probably like defensive back 10 in the IDP Invitational. So, I'm looking forward to seeing some of that production. And hey, we're not in the same division, Ricky, but it would be great to have him and then go up against you. But let's go.
Just so you know, I grabbed him in my division of the IDP Charity Invitational for autism. So if we meet, they'll cancel each other out.
Yeah, that's very true. And for anyone that's catching this, go to idpplus.com, check out the IDP Plus Autism Awareness Charity Invitational. We do one every year, similar to Scott Fishbowl, and it supports the Eagles Autism Foundation. But let's move to Kansas City Chiefs land and talk Chiefs defensive backs.
On the Chiefs' perspective, so Justin Reed and Brian Cook are expected to be the 2 starting safeties. Reed did miss a lot of camp, but he was cleared and then started playing, and he's expected to be one of the 2 starters. Chamari Connor, who is a safety by trade, is actually looking to be the nickel back. While they traded L'Jarius Sneed away here in the offseason to Tennessee, they thought they had between Watson and Williams and Reed and Nick Jones and Haddon, who they drafted. They felt like they would be in really good shape. They trade Sneed away, and a lot of those guys are not panning out. So Connor has moved in and looks like he will be the nickel cornerback. What that also does too is Jaden Hicks, 4th round rookie that they drafted, puts him right on the cusp of getting playing time. Cook has had injury history problems. Justin Reed has. Jaden Hicks was also another one, very successful in the line of scrimmage, looked really, really good in the preseason, the playing time that he got. Jaden Hicks, another rookie to stash who I like. And if you can't afford to stash him, though, but if you see an injury to any of those 3 gentlemen that I just called out, jump to that waiver wire, grab Jaden Hicks as quick as you can.
All righty. Well, let's talk. Give me a little intel here about the LA Rams defensive back so that I can go into the game this Sunday night and know, like, hey, is Jared Goff about to go off or not?
Well, I know you're a big Lions fan, Nate. And Jared Goff should have a pretty decent game. When you look at their cornerback situation, Tre'Davious White and Demarius Williams both coming off of injuries, both new to the Rams scheme and so forth. So plenty of opportunities targeting the cornerbacks until they really get back up to speed, those two. What's interesting, and we start talking about IDP from a safety perspective, it's expected that Quentin Lake will be one of the starting safeties, but he's also going to be the famous play the star position as well. So when he and Cam Curl were expected to be starting safeties, Cam Curl has apparently looked really good as they signed him away from Washington, but he might not necessarily get used like the same way he was in Washington, closer a little bit closer into the box at times. So Curl might not quite have the production that he had in Washington, although from a true football perspective, he'll perform very well. Quentin Lake will be in there. They go to the nickel. He moves into that star position that Jalen Ramsey made so famous. John Johnson is expected to start because he's a veteran and has more experience. When I say start, move into that role, to that safety role when Lake goes into the star position. But over time, Cam Kinchens, the rookie out of the University of Miami, who's also had a very good preseason, should overtake John Johnson. Remember, Johnson was someone the Rams let go, was willing to let him sign anywhere. He really couldn't find a home. They signed him back last year out of necessity, brought him back again this year, but he's someone they're just looking to replace. I hate to use the term jag because he's a professional football player. So anybody that's a professional football player, pretty impressive, but don't see him holding that job for long. Cam Kinchens will replace him, but Quentin Lake, another man that I'm trying to grab, and I'd be willing to put in my starting lineup in week 1.
Gotcha. All right. Let's go to the heartland of the East Coast of the U.S. here, Pittsburgh and the Steelers.
The Steelers, the one thing I want to call out with the Steelers is their slot cornerback, Beanie Bishop, little 5'9" guy. Easy for me to say because I'm about 5'9", out of West Virginia, if I remember correctly. Surprisingly, won the slot starting cornerback job for the Steelers. So if the Steelers use him in a blitzing way and keep him close to the line of scrimmage for tackles, he could be an interesting cornerback to keep in mind. I'm not picking him up at this point in time, but I am keeping an eye on him just to see how they use him. Check those box scores after week 1 and week 2, the Steelers and Beanie Bishop.
Gotcha. All right, so let's go just north to Detroit, and let's talk about the other side of the ball, from the Rams to the Lions.
So on the Lions side of thing, they drafted, of course, 2 cornerbacks. They picked up Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw, who they're excited about both of them. They signed Amik Robinson. They traded for Carlton Davis. Completely new defensive backfield for the Lions, which as a Lions fan, you should be thrilled about. Expect to see Davis and Arnold starting on the inside, and right now it appears Amik Robinson has the inside track for the slot position. That's good because the Lions really want to play Branch more at a safety role. They can move him down to the slot if necessary, but with some of the injuries that Melifonwu continues to have throughout his career, even though he showed up very well in the year, not as reliable because of an injury perspective. So it looks like Branch and Kirby Joseph are your starting safeties for the Lions. Robertson in the slot, Davis and Arnold on the outside, with Rakestraw as one of the backups. So that's how it looks like it's going to play out to start the year. Melifonwu was helped me to be successful in a couple of my leagues as a late year pickup, and as they used him as a blitzer, and he made big plays in the secondary. He was all over the place, but at the same time, can't put him in your starting lineup right now. He's actually, you're giving him the love there. Can't put him in your starting lineup. He might not even be active in week 1 because of this injury he has, maybe even week 2. So no Melifonwu, Branch, Joseph are your starting safeties.
Yeah, no, as an IDP player, very difficult to actually start, but as a clutch game-ending, defensive back, love Melifonwu and hope that we get to see a lot of excitement from him this year. But taking the trip down I-75 to Tennessee, let's talk about the Titans.
Tennessee. So Tennessee looked pretty bad from a defensive secondary with just Amani Hooker and a bunch of other folks, including Elijah Moden, who they just traded for a bag of footballs to the Los Angeles Chargers for. So he's gone now. The reason they did that, though, is they signed 2 free agents, 2 former Seattle Seahawks. In fact, Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams, the former Louisiana State University Tigers superstar. So, But what's interesting is right now, from a starting perspective, Hooker and Diggs, Jamal Adams is in a backup role. One of the problems of the Titans have is on the pass rushing side of things. They are really weak at the edge position outside of Harold Landry. Arden Key, another former LSU player who I love dearly, was great for my Tigers, but he's just a so-so pro, just being honest. Behind him, they actually dumped Rashad Weaver, who just signed to somebody's practice squad today. I can't even remember who it was. And they have two younger fellows, a late round pick in Jalen Harrell and one of the Murphy twins out of UCLA. I believe this one was Grayson, if I remember correctly. But both of them are young rookies, inexperienced, a little bit light right now. If anything, potentially Jamal Adams, when he does get utilized, becomes that blitzing safety that made him such a good IDP asset a few years ago when he helped me to win the Football Diehards inaugural championship on this shirt that I'm wearing right now. So keep an eye on how Adams gets used. But right now, out of the chute, I just don't think he'll get the snap counts to be able to justify you putting him in your starting lineup.
Gotcha. All right.
The only one other thing,
Yeah.
Hooker has shown that he doesn't tend to play 17 games in a year, about 14 games or so. Diggs is getting up in age. Of course, Adams is 29-ish as well. So there could be some injuries that create opportunities. If you need a bye week streamer, a couple of weeks streaming person, and one of Hooker and our Diggs is out hurt, absolutely grab Jamal Adams for that streaming role.
Gotcha. There we go. So continuing down towards the Gulf Coast again, looking at New Orleans and the Saints.
Oh, my beloved Saints. Oh, man, I just wish we'd hit the restart button. Oh, I miss our owner, Tom Benson. He would have done something about this by now. His wife, owner Rita, is just too nice. But right now, the Saints, we're going to have, originally, everybody thought it was going to be Jordan Howden, the 5th-round rookie from last year. He just didn't make enough plays, and he unfortunately missed a big tackle on Josh Dobbs running into the end zone on a free safety that he should in the preseason, that he should have made. That just really hurt him. A lot of people saw that. Abrams sucked, so he got released, although he got re-signed to the practice squad. And former Lion and former other teams, Will Harris is potentially the starting safety next to the Honey Badger for the Saints this year. Harris is a nice player, but someone that won't be starting all year. And I could see this rotation thing happening. I could see it at some point, even some other safety getting picked up off the waiver wire and get thrown in there. I could see it going back to Howden later in the year if the Saints just completely implode despite the week schedule that they have to play. So this one, avoid it. The Honey Badger makes plays and all. So if you're in a big play scoring system, Honey Badger is someone to consider, Tyrann Mathieu. But other than that, stay away from all these other folks. If you need a spot on your bench and one of those guys are on it, kick them out to add in one of those other folks we talked about earlier.
Got it. All right. And last but not least here, we've got Washington Commanders.
Jeremy Chinn. This is the return of Jeremy Chinn, folks. So as a rookie, finished second in the rookie defensive voting for most valuable rookie. And then it just kind of fell apart. Injuries, new coaches, defensive scheme changes, not sure how to use them, etc. Dan Quinn, the new head coach in Washington, he's got a plan for Chinn. He targeted him, and you can see him playing a lot in the box with Quan Martin, the second-year player who looked really good in the second half of the year last year, being that free safety kind of role. Chinn is someone that I would be targeting, not as necessarily a top 12 safety, but shortly after that. But I can easily see him finishing in the top 10. So if you're looking for someone upside, if you're looking for someone who it's like, maybe I can pull the wool over the eyes of one of my fellow owners, make a trade for him, I'd be going for him now before he starts racking up the stats in the box score. Add Jeremy Chinn to your team.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that wraps up our rapid fire defensive backs. And here we go. Last week, I threw a curveball at Ricky. I got another one for you. And we're going to have to turn this into a regular segment now that I think of it during the season. But both of our teams are playing this week. We should be talking about those. Give me your take on Lions, Rams, and Saints, Panthers. Who's the biggest winner out of those four teams? And I don't know. We need to keep track of like how often I win, how often you win, but maybe that's not fair this season.
Certainly not fair for my Saints when I'm actually hoping they implode this year and they move on from Derek Carr and et cetera, et cetera. So that one's not quite fair, but I'll give you my take on the games. I see the Lions taking care of the Rams in this first game. Part of the reason is Puka missed a decent amount of the preseason. So that's part one. The other thing is McVay just doesn't play anybody that they're confident is going to make the roster early on. So first stringers, key second stringers, I just have a feeling that that's going to cause the Rams to have a little bit of a slow start. Talked about their cornerbacks concerns, talked about the linebacker concerns as well. I think Amon-Ra is going to just eat and eat and eat in the middle of that field in this first game. Lions over the Rams by about 6. Saints versus Panthers. I am worried about the Saints being overconfident. I am worried about the Saints being in a new offensive system with Kubiak. I do think the Saints will have a very, very strong defense. I think this is going to be a low-scoring, boring game, and I think the Saints are going to make one big mistake on offense, i.e. Derek Carr, and the Panthers are going to pull out like a 16-13 win.
Wow. Okay.
That is not a game that you're going to want to watch. You're going to want to watch red zone. You're going to just want to look at the box score at the end of the game. Find something else to watch, folks. And I hate to say that about my beloved Saints, but I think that's where we're heading.
That's too bad. I wish they were a little more competitive. I wish we could have a little contest at the end to see who knocks a W out during the week. But hey, I like what you're saying about the Lions. With that, we're wrapping up our show. This is IDP Advice. We come to you courtesy of the Fantasy Football Advice Network. And we will be back next week with more IDP advice. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate Cheat. Ricky is at RickyRod66, as well as follow the IDP_plus account on Twitter. And, we're into the season now. Definitely check out our Start Sit show. See how I enunciated that second word there, Ricky? We're not fighting. We are starting and sitting. We go live.
We're not sitting on the pot.
Yeah, we go live at 11 a.m. Eastern to answer start sit questions for IDP specifically. You can find going on Twitter at IDP_plus or go to our YouTube channel, IDP Plus Fantasy. And Ricky's one of the main co-hosts.
And Nathan, another thing too, for our show next Tuesday, I'm very excited because week 1 will be in the books. We'll have the opportunity to talk about all the key headlines happening from an IDP perspective. We'll be able to talk about who are some of the waiver wires to target, who are some of the key injuries that happen, who ended up surprising us playing more, playing less. We'll have a lot of great stuff to talk about. Come on and join us, folks. Look forward to sharing all this knowledge with you all and help you win your fantasy football leagues.
All right. Until next week.